We will have, MOPP will have at least 2 poll worker training sessions before the general election. We're shooting for September, October timeframe. I wanted to wait to hear what Through the Vote has to offer us, but we will put together some training manual, and one of those things that Through the Vote did for Missouri specifically, St. Louis County, and then hopefully everybody shows up and gets trained, in addition to what the election authorities train. But we want to do our own training. The election authorities do a fine job in training, but they don't address the issues. What if you find things that are done wrong? What if you're told that's the way we've always done it? You need to have a comeback. You need to know what you need to say when you get those answers. You need to be able to dispute what somebody tells you. Yes, Eva?
I was just going to say, what if you're challenged? I mean, what legal grounds do you have other than just being a citizen watch group? If anyone challenges your authority, what do you do?
Well, if you're a poll worker,
well, if you're not a poll worker but a True to Vote
challenger,
or worker.
As a challenger, you have the option to call the command center and tell them what you're finding, and they have the legal experts there. You cannot tell anybody inside the polling place as a challenger to change their behavior. You're just observing.
I remember you're not assigned, you're not working on behalf of True the Vote, you've been trained by True the Vote. Challengers are assigned by the party.
Right.
So if there's an issue, the first thing you do is you call that county party leader that assigned you, that gave you that assignment.
And it's
They
a
can
legally
fight for you or not.
It's a legally approved appointment that the clerk has agreed to. It's a prearranged deal, and you are an official with certain responsibilities as a challenger.
Of course, that supervisory judge is still the king.
Right.
He can claim
You
you're
have to be diplomatic about
disruptive, but you're representing that party that appointed you. So it's just how much they're willing to stand up for you.
Last election, for instance, we had an elderly poll worker or a poll judge that was concerned whether the computer was right or not. And they opened the ballot box to count to see if it was right. Well, that's not something you can do during the election process. And our challenger called the county clerk's office as the recognized, duly appointed challenger and said, could we get somebody over here? They've got the ballot box open. And we got that straightened out. It was not fraud. It was just a well-intentioned, ill-trained person. But the more of those people that are present, the less the problems happen. It's like when you're going down the road and you see a police car, what's the first thing you do? You take your foot off the accelerator and see how fast you're going, right? So that's what the fraud perpetrators are going to go work a different poll if they know there's somebody on the lookout.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm the county clerk in Callaway County. And these are some of the reasons why I ran for office, because I feel that elections are extremely important, and it's important for us to watch the integrity. Well, this is my second year in office, and I've come up with a lot of opposition because that's not the way it's always been. I have heard that phrase so many times. If I was paid for every time I heard that, that would be amazing. Because the lady before me was there 24 years, and the guy before her was, 20-some years, and, and she was his deputy, so things were done this way. Training, it was maybe an hour, and when I took office, my first training was between 2 and 3 hours, and they weren't happy. And I got a lot of suggestions that, it shouldn't be that long, and I told them, if you want to be a judge, you have to go to training, and it's going to be long, because we're going to include some of these issues. It's not just show up, here's how the machine works. You need to know the laws, and I had judges that had been there for several years, and they're like, well, I didn't know that. And no matter how good your training is, and I'm looking for tools for training, so I want to talk to you afterwards, but no matter how good your training is, again, it falls back to the judges. I was told when I was there, with your first training, make sure and tell them, if they're not on the books, call our office. No matter how many times you tell them, there's still some of those judges that have been there 20 years. They're going to say, well, they have their voter registration card, they should be voting. Not necessarily, because they might have been Since that time, they might have got a felony, and that's why their name's not on the book anymore. So call the office. But if the people that are there aren't doing the things they're supposed to, then you've got a problem. And those are the ones, working, you have to weed out, you find out where those problems are. And that was, in 2010, like August, they had a case where somebody had been allowed to vote because he had his card, he should be voting. And then when it got back to the office, they realized that person shouldn't have voted because they were taken off because they had a felony. But he's already voted. What can you do at that point? And so these are the reasons why we need people to get involved and become election judges and volunteer their time to go out there. You do get paid, and you do have to go to training, and they look forward to the food at the training.
Yes.
You get paid for the training time, right? And so the struggle that we have is increasing that training, making it better. I'm looking for things to improve it, but not all county clerks are. And I'm not saying anything bad about any of the county clerks, but you have to be supportive of your county clerks. And the things that I'm hearing you saying is you're not there to attack them, you're there to
Help
assist them.
Partner, we'd love to work with the clerks or with the
Right.
party chairs, whoever has training already.
Right.
If we can supplement that or help expand what they've got going on, perfect.
I have developed a relationship with the election authorities in St. Louis County. I call them on a regular basis, I ask them, how does this work, how does that work, how can we help? So they don't view me as somebody that's out to get them. They view me as somebody that's out to help them. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sure our elections are fair and open, and our election workers are properly trained. Yes, Val?
And see, Charles, we have this thing, that if there's a ballot that's in question, you let them go ahead and do the voting and then.
Yeah, that's provisional voting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Does that take care of the problems then? And then their office?
It could, it possibly can.
Sit after the election.
Yes, and the Board of Election does review those.
Yeah.
I want to say one other thing, I'm a roaming deputy, I don't know if every county has that. Roaming deputies go visit all the polling places, we do it 3 times a day. And we walk in and ask the poll, by now the poll workers know me. If they have a problem, and they don't want to tell their supervisor, because their supervisor says, that's the way we always done it, they tell me. You get 450 in one day. No, I do 20 polling places. There's teams of roaming deputies. And St. Louis County has learned from the 2008 election, where they had difficulties with machines not being set up properly. They now also have technical rovers that go around and check to make sure that all the equipment works all right. Okay? So people know I'm coming and they tell me stuff. A year ago, somebody told me, by the way, somebody was allowed to vote without signing the book. So I went back and talked to the supervisor and told them about it, and they said, yes, we realized it and they were trying to get the person back. But what I'm trying to say is, over time now, people are realizing that people are helping and watching, and that they can tell us if something goes wrong. And through that whole process, I have learned a lot about the election procedures at the voting places, and that's why I want to do poll worker training. But I want to do it before the election, closer to it. Because if I do it now, then people start forgetting about it.
I have a question. I voted in Glendale, and I remember this one time this woman in front of me got there and said, that's not my signature, I haven't voted yet. Sure, they do in cases like that.
They need to call the Board of Election and figure out how to number one, not allow it going forward, and what do they need to do to fix it. But if the person has already voted, the person has already voted.
Who's the third,
The incorrect person.
That goes it just got stolen.
Right.
Because you can't identify the person that stole it, because they present themselves as someone else, you can't prosecute, and that is why there's always the denial that this goes on, because there's not a trail. I say publicize it, because that's, you're never gonna get a conviction, because you can't find the person, because they gave a fake name.
So does she, not get to vote?
That was
That's
what
correct.
it's
The
gonna
second
be.
person.
She not get to vote?
I don't remember.
The real person, that real person does not get to vote. Her vote was already taken.
Sometimes they'll let them vote provisional, and they do, here's a great system, you know how you can't unvote a vote, because you don't have somebody voted. What sometimes they will do, they will randomly pull a ballot to try to balance it, so that the numbers, they'll just, yeah, like that makes it right, it makes your count come out, but of course you can't, yeah.
Well, you know how they,
There's no other, there's not a way to unvote that person that came in, because you don't know how they voted.
like when Pete walked into a polling place and said, I want the ballot for every folder, and they gave it to him. And I've heard in North County, people come in, look at, they turn the register around and look at people that have not voted yet and said, I want to vote this vote. And people let them because, guess what? There's only Democrats, poll workers.
And it often
There's not enough
happens late in
Republicans.
the day when we need,
After 6 o'clock, the Democrats run the bus and collect people, dump them into the polls and let them vote.
And the poll workers are tired by then.
Yes, they've been out there since 5 o'clock in the morning. Yes.
So I have 3 North County stories. I volunteered twice, or at least twice. So the one year, like I was a judge, and like I'm sitting there, and it was myself and another judge, and so then like we were the Republicans, and then we were talking with the Democrat judges, and then so like this lady said, she's like, oh yeah, this is my sister, and she's like, oh no, I mean we're just friends or something. So they're actually, so they're all the same party. Then she just volunteering as a Republican. Then let me think. Then like we did provisional ballots. Then like in another year in North County where they just said, hey, I'm not here on this list here, but I can't drive over there to my whatever. Can I just vote here? Can I just vote here this precinct? Because I can't get to where I'm really registered. They're like, so they gave me a provisional ballot so I want to vote there. And then like at that same location, at the end of the day, like we were supposed to do a tally, like balance, how many people voted versus how many votes we had. Well, they didn't match, and so then they didn't fix it. They just said, well, we'll fix it down to the office. We'll just fix it down to the office.
I was talking to the election guy just a couple of weeks ago about Republican versus Democratic poll workers. I said, how do you identify them? He says, well, we ask them, and they tell us they're Republican, and then when they come in with the training, they have to fill out another form, and they say they're Democrat. Well, they just want to be a poll worker to get paid.
Right.
and
There's all kinds of stuff going on.
if you're working at a poll, I've been an election judge too, and where we were, if you are low on Republican, they will, somebody who's a Democrat, oh, I'll go ahead and work at the Republican. Well, okay, it fills the slot, but it doesn't create that balance.
Well, that's where it happens, that people can come in and demand a ballot, or ask for a ballot, and the 2 Democrats, they don't care, they just let them vote. Anyway, enough of this. We will have training later on in the year. If you're interested, you can always send us an email at the Missouri Precinct Project.
I've got a few extra handouts if somebody wants to take it.
I'll take
Text them back, and I'll leave it.
And, but we wanted True the Vote to come in here because they're doing this on a national basis and help us out. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now it's time. Oh. If you go out those doors on the side, take your lunch ticket and go to the lunchroom, your signs in the hall.
Can we leave our stuff here, or?
Of course.
America's most abundant sources of energy. After banning its use in America, I make it illegal for American companies to ship it overseas. If I wanted America to fail, I use their schools to teach one generation of Americans that their factories and their cars will have a new ice age. And I muster a straight face so I can teach the next generation that they're from global warming. When it's cold out, I call it I imply that America's cities and factories run on loose on their own wishes. I teach children how to ignore the hypocrisy of condemning logging, mining, and farming while having roofs over their heads, heat in their homes, and food on their tables. I would never teach children that the free market is the only force in human history to outlive the poor, establish the middle class, and create lasting prosperity. Instead, I demonize prosperity itself, so they will not miss what they will never have. And I want America to fail. I would create countless new regulations and seldom cancel old ones that would be so complicated that only bureaucrats, lawyers, and lobbyists can understand. That way small businesses with big ideas wouldn't stand a chance. And I would never have to worry about another Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, or Steve Jobs. I would ridicule as flat earthers those who urge them to lower energy costs by increasing supply. And when the evangelists of common sense try to remind people about the laws of supply and demand, I enlist the sympathetic media to drown them out. If I wanted America to fail, I would empower unaccountable bureaucracy seated in the distant capital to bully Americans out of their dreams and their property rights. I sent federal agents to raid guitar factories for using their own kind of wood. I forced homeowners to tear down their own homes built on their own land. I make it almost impossible for farmers to farm, miners to mine, loggers to log, and builders to build. Because I don't believe in free markets, I invent false ones. I devise fictitious products like clothing brands and trade in imaginary markets. I convince people that this would create jobs and be good for the economy. If I wanted America to fail, for every concern I invent a crisis, and for every crisis I invent a cause, like shutting down entire industries and killing tens of thousands of jobs in the name of saving spotted owls. And when everyone learned the stunning irony that the owls were victims of their larger cousins and not people, it would already be decades too late. If I wanted America to fail, I'd make it easier to stop commerce and to start it, easier to kill jobs and create them, more fashionable to resent success than to seek it. When industries seek to create jobs, I file lawsuits to stop them, and then I make taxpayers pay for my lawyers. If I wanted America to fail, I would transform the environmental agenda from a movement of conservation to an economic suicide. I would concede entire industries to our economic rivals by imposing regulations that cost trillions. Celebrate those who preach environmental austerity in public while indulging a lavish lifestyle. I convince Americans that Europe has it right and that America has it wrong. If I wanted America to fail, I would prey on the goodness and the decency of ordinary Americans. I would only need to convince them that all of this is for the greater good. If I wanted America to fail, I suppose I wouldn't change a thing.
Provide some context for the moment, possibly, from where we are in the country. The one thing that he says, and by the way, it's not an American Majority video, I just find it so compelling, I like people to see it.
What did you say?
I said it's not an American Majority video, I just find it compelling for people to see that video, because one of the things he says in the end, after making a really good case, I think, for where we are with the country right now, is that if you just let it go, it's on a course to disaster. So you're here because clearly you're choosing not to do nothing. You've said, I'm going to engage. It's the reason that you're taking hours of your life and spending part of your personal wealth to sacrifice for these things. But one of the things that's become a personal passion of mine, and the reason why I started working with American Majority this year, is that one of the most frustrating things to me is, hey, we're going to be activists, we're going to make a difference, but we're not being as effective as we could be. And so they've coined this term, and I'm going to pass it everybody, a manual to everybody today, but it's called effectivism. It's activism that works. Or maybe you could call it activism with trajectory, or purpose, or with an objective. But that's what we want to talk about today, so that those of you who are engaging in the November elections are actually being effective at the things that you're doing. Because we spend a lot of time doing things. Well, I want to do effective things that actually make a difference. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Allow me to introduce myself really quick before we get too far. My name is Chris Littleton. And I work with American Majority now, but I haven't always. In 2008, I bet I share a very similar story to pretty much everyone in here. And that was, I was really frustrated. So I was actually very frustrated with George Bush. I was very frustrated about the spending and the government growth and everything that became what was a Republican administration, because I couldn't tell the difference between Republican and Democrat anymore. And so I got so frustrated, I started calling friends and neighbors, like I bet you've done at some point in your life, and going, what the heck are we going to do about this? You can't even tell the difference in a party system. Seems like both these groups are taking us over the edge. And so I started having meetings at my home, and I said to a friend at one of these meetings, I said, you know, if there's a McDonald's on every corner, why can there not be liberty-minded people in every neighborhood? I know they're out there. I know that these people, this belief system, this common belief system that is just founding principles, I know people believe in this stuff, but it's been lost in this chaos that has become modern politics. And I wasn't around for the first sort of round of Tea Parties in 2007. I truly wasn't engaged at that point. But in 2009, when the big Tea Parties happened again, the sort of second round of Tea Parties happened in response to the stimulus, I connected with one of the planners of that event in Cincinnati, which is where I live. His name is Mike Wilson, and he's helped plan some of those Cincinnati Tea Party rallies. The big rallies, a lot of you have attended those same things. And him and I started working together immediately, and so him and I were kind of driving the Cincinnati Tea Party in our area. And my rallying cry to him was, and we gotta get off these rallies at some point. You just can't, it's so much work and emotion and all this stuff, but it's not doing anything. So I had spelled out what I thought was effective at that point. But the one thing that we both knew very early on, was it has to be local. And you guys are part of the Missouri Precinct Project, so that's as local as it gets, right? Your precinct, your backyard. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. But we at least figured out that it has to be local. So in stage 2 of my little biography was, okay, I helped start about 20 groups in the Cincinnati area, maybe 25 actually. Then I said, well, if we got all these groups and there's other things happening around the state of Ohio, why don't we start connecting them? So Mike and myself and 2 other guys formed a group called the Ohio Liberty Council. It's like a coalition of liberty-minded grassroots organizations, Tea Party groups, 9/12 groups, all kinds of different groups. Connected them and said, guys, if we have big issues that we need to work on together, we've got to be able to communicate with each other and have a network and build some infrastructure to be able to do some things. So sure enough, you guys remember the path. This was in May of 2009, and we're hearing all these crazy things that Pelosi and Reid and Obama are going, here's the agenda, welcome. And it just started with stimulus, right? That was the beginning. Remember? I remember feeling like you're a batter sitting there, and the pitcher's just not even waiting for you to get set. Just the balls are just coming at you, going, what in the world is going on? And that's what 2009 felt like. We could only yell. I mean, we didn't even know anything better to do. It's a completely emotional reaction. But by 2010, when we started coalescing around the state of Ohio, I was president of the Ohio Liberty Council at that time, about 5 or 6 of us sat down in a bar, and in response to Obamacare, specifically the mandate, we said, you know what? We're going to do something. We want to be effective. We want to pick an objective, pick a battle, and go after this thing. And so what we felt the strongest thing we could do, rather than just hoping and praying that it goes right, which it didn't in the end, was we amended Ohio's Constitution via Citizens Initiative, which you have ballot initiative access here in Missouri as well. Now, what did that project look like for 5 guys who just months ago were planning rallies and talking to people and trying to start groups? It meant that we ended up gathering 546,000 signatures around the state of Ohio. We didn't have any money. So volunteers came together for the largest volunteer signature gathering effort in Ohio's history. And of course, this catches fire with a lot of people after a little while, like, wow, you guys are going to oppose Obamacare. That's interesting. We're able to get some funding, hired a paid firm to come, and this firm from California said, you were one of the 5 largest volunteer signature gathering efforts in American history. I've never seen a volunteer effort like this. You guys are incredible. Just never seen anything like this. And so then it gets put on the ballot. In November of 2011, now we have to run a campaign. I've never run a campaign before. So you have to learn all the tools. You have to learn how to fundraise. You have to learn how to get out the vote. You have to learn how to do voter targeting. You have to learn how to build call centers and do precinct walk plans and all the stuff. We're going to talk about some of this stuff today. We had to learn all of it on the fly in a statewide election. Well, long story short, we ended up winning 66% of the statewide vote. which was the largest victory of any citizens initiative in Ohio history, the largest margin of victory, and we won in every single county, every single one, all 88 Ohio counties, even the urban counties, Cincinnati, Columbus, Cleveland, just like your equivalent of your St. Louis or Kansas City. Urban areas are very different. We won those counties too. So one of the other things we're going to talk about today is messaging, because freedom is a narrative that can work and does work, and everything I tell you today is not going to be from a theoretical perspective. I've done it, I've taken part in it, I've helped build these things. They're real life stories, they're real life examples. Any questions before I jump into content? If not, I will just hop on. Diana?
Where is that film that you showed us? Is that available?
It's on YouTube.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. If you just YouTube, If I Wanted America to Fail, it now has millions of hits, which is amazing.
Yeah, well, but couldn't you also get them to show that to people?
Sure, I do it all the time. Absolutely.
No, I mean, do you get a DVD?
You can download it. Or go to their website. The organization did it. I think it's American for Limited Government. I think put out that.
Free Market America.
Free Market America. They're a project of somebody. I remember just reading that somewhere. But yeah, it is a good video. So, If I Wanted America to Fail,
Okay.
and yeah, just plug it into YouTube, and you can send the link around the planet. I hope it gets a few more million hits, because I think it's great for context.
2.4 right now.
2.4 million, that's great, especially for conservative video. We'll talk about use of technology here momentarily. I think conservatives are behind the curve with regards to technology. We're going to try and advance a couple of those things today as well. All right, so I talked about a really, really big thing that ended up happening. That was kind of end result. One of the things I want to give you, especially since you're a precinct-based, precinct-focused organization, which I think exactly what organization is, that's great, that's perfect. Your mindset's already there. I want to show you a case study from a single Tea Party group in Ohio called the Claremont County Tea Party. And we used one of my fellow trainers, American Majority, also snatched him up at my request, because the guy's just the best organizer in the state, no hands down, which probably makes one of the best organizers in the country that's come from the grassroots world. Sort of non-political, professional type stuff, non-political operative. I want to tell his story for the Claremont County Tea Party, because I think it's so instructive for what's possible for a lot of the things that you guys are working on. So, with that said, let's take a quick case study of the Claremont County Tea Party. They started in December of 2009, so this is actually one of the groups I helped start in Cincinnati. The founder is Ted Stevenow. And when I met up, I had 40 emails of people that we collected at a rally or something in his particular county. This is a suburban county in Cincinnati, just outside of the city. Now they're right around 2,000 members. They do maintain monthly meetings, which is important if you are a county or even, I'd say, a precinct-based organization. We've seen some pretty fascinating things I'll give in their case study pop up. But they're down to very, very much even precinct-based websites. I mean, it's pretty impressive. I'll show you a couple of those things. But they still do maintain a monthly county meeting, just to help foster that sort of sense of being, a sense of purpose with a lot of other people. This cord's and trips on it. So they do maintain their monthly meetings. They have lots of return paths, and I'm going to talk about this in greater detail as I give the case study. But one of the things that's incredibly important, I actually find a very common mistake, is that people are at a fair or they're somewhere and they don't establish return paths. Meaning, how do I get back in contact with you? It is a world of a difference to have a good conversation with somebody and pass them literature and go, oh great, they're on my side. And it's something to bring them into the fold, bring them into the coalition. Just something as simple as gathering an email or a phone number. I cannot tell you how often that's overlooked. I did it. I know these mistakes because then I wanted to shoot myself in the head after I realized the mistakes we'd made. We had rallied 18,000 people in September of 2009. 18,000 people. You know what we should have been doing? We should have had 50 volunteers out gathering information on people so we could have 18,000 emails and phone numbers and contacts, and we didn't. We had a team of about 5 people doing that. We got a lot of contact information. But all that common ground, all those common believers in our cause, we missed it. So when you do something, make sure you establish return paths. That way you can do it through robocalls, email, all these different sort of means and ways to connect. It's actually a really important thing for any given group. But one of the things that this group in Claremont County engaged in was, right away, a friend of mine was teaching, hey, you've got to engage yourselves in party, county, central committees. The actual parties and counties, which I know I've read your website, so I know a lot of you are engaged in party committees. That's a good thing. Well, you fast forward this, They're doing a lot of things. They're working on the healthcare freedom amendment. They gathered 1 out of every 4 voters in their county. So they built their coalition through the healthcare freedom amendment. It was a common ground message. They kept moving forward with county central party engagement. It's a pretty fascinating story that I can't recreate because if Ted tells it, all his emotion is there because he was there. But all it took for him was they went to their group and said, hey, listen, we need to get involved in our county party. Said, okay, well, we agree. But they didn't have enough people to hit critical mass. There's about 200 precinct committeemen in their county. That's how big it is. And they didn't have quite that many. So they actually sent a mailer to some people that they thought they could trust just based on kind of looking at voter records. And said, listen, you're not involved. If you want to, come to an informational meeting. They were able to gather just 7 people in this one instance. And to have a control of this, it's called a ward there, but Union Township was their ward that had 42. But there were only, you guys know the story, there were only 13 people that were actually serving in that particular ward. And so they got enough to have a majority of those people. They challenged some, knocked some out, and then also got a couple extras, so they got a majority of that. Well, what do you get when you get 7 in this particular way the county is structured? They got to start appointing people. So they ended up with people who ran and people who didn't, just under 50 people is what they got the first time that they did this in 2010. So where does it go from there? They ended up, so it says it replaced about 1/3 of the county central committee. For the first time, they broke through what Ted calls the crony barrier. And I'm sure all of you know this feeling in your county parties as well. The people that have been there forever, the people that really the reason they're there is because they are either a family member or connected to some kind of elected official who they'll always support them just for the sake of supporting them, regardless of the principal position, candidate, or whatever else. They're really there just to help their family and friends. Okay? Probably sounds familiar if you've been involved in party politics, because it's a very, very, very common problem. Well, after they took over that sort of largest township and got a lot of people on board, and again, somewhere near 1/3 of the total party, they're at the first reorganization meeting, and Ted had clarified for everybody, you know what, we're not going to try and take the leadership positions, we just want to try and influence the party to go the right direction. It's our first time around, let's sort of take it easy. So they come out, and the existing chairman, or someone's running the meeting, and they say, are there any nominations for chairman of the party in the reorganization meeting? And someone says, I vote to renominate, his name's Tim Rudd, renominate Tim Rudd as chairman of the party. Anyone else? Nope. All right, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? And all the Tea Party people go, whoa, it's that easy? You can just throw somebody's name out there? Because they didn't know the process, they didn't know all the rules. And so they go, all right, for vice chairman, we have so-and-so is running. This was the current guy. And someone says, Ted Steveno. I nominate Ted Steveno, who's the guy, this Tea Party guy, 3 months earlier didn't know any of this stuff. Didn't even know what Central Committee was 3 months earlier. And one of his other friends goes, and Ted's going, we didn't know this. What? And he tells this really funny story. He's like, I'm in a t-shirt, shorts, and flip-flops. Like, I'm not prepared to do anything. And somebody goes, I second it. He goes, okay, well, we'd like to hear from the candidates. So they both get up there, and Ted just pours his heart out. And he says, this is why I'm doing this. This is why I'm frustrated. This is the direction I think our country's going in. And all that sincerity is there. And they have a vote, and all of a sudden, a guy who didn't know what the Central Committee was a few months earlier is now vice chairman of that Republican Party. So this leads into a whole bunch of other things. But
That's how it works.
it is exactly how it works. It was that simple. It was only a third of the people engaged, and all of a sudden now they are in serious leadership positions within that particular county party. And I'll keep telling the story kind of as we go along. But really, what he puts at the bottom of this coalition building thing was they did maintain an existing Tea Party organization. They didn't try to merge the two or make them. They wanted something that was separate and distinct, that was kind of principles focused, that if people weren't Republicans, it's cool. That's all right. We have a lot of common ground, a lot of common messaging we can still focus on. So they grew that group while at the same time making some inroads into the Republican Party for some pretty significant influence. But almost all of their work, as the organization comes in, was focused on precinct work and coalition building. Precinct work and coalition building. Over and over and over. And we'll continue this in their case study. So like I said, they kept their meeting schedule going. They developed volunteers for all kinds of different things. He says, point number 5 there, I'm not going to read every single one of these, is Alinsky-type victories. So what does that mean? What's an Alinsky-type victory? You need, yes, Saul Alinsky, rules for radicals, Mr. Super Uber leftist crazy guy, but effective with regards to organization and coalition building to accomplish some specific things. Alinsky-type victories, and I find this is also a very common mistake made with a lot of liberty groups, they're small victories that you can celebrate along the way. Because here's another thing that we do wrong, and I did it wrong for a long time. You go, well, what's the purpose of your organization? Well, we're here to save the country. When does that occur? Is that a starting point? Is that a stopping point? How do you know you're successful? Are you closer to your goal? Are you further away? So if you can't have some small victories along the way, little small things, we'll talk about a number of them today, you'll start to lose people. And it's not that they don't care what you're doing, it's just like, I don't know why I'm coming, I don't really know what we're doing. Do we have a plan here? What's going on? So you start to see people just sort of trail away. So they made a point to have lots of little small victories. It could be, on this election for this candidate, we're going to make 1,000 phone calls. That doesn't sound like a lot, but if you've never done it before, that may be a heavy lift. Or we're going to hit 1,000 doors. The goal wasn't getting someone elected. The goal was building a process and team to facilitate results. The elections aren't going away, guys. Even this year, I'm actually not one of the doomsday people. Obama's horrible. There's no doubt about it. I have no good words for Obama. But we have had Woodrow Wilson, who was horrible, worse than Obama if you actually look at his record. Income tax, Federal Reserve, I mean, you name it, eradication of the 17th Amendment occurred during that time. You've got FDR, created, the New Deal and all the socialistic programs that came along with that. LBJ and the Great Society. I mean, it's been bad before. It is possible to go on. We are not at the end of the line. I don't think so anyway. And especially if, just strategically, the House shouldn't flip. And I don't think the Senate's going to have 60 votes, even if it went the wrong way. It's not going to have 60 on the Democrat side, which means at bare minimum, we're in exactly the same position now as we are after November. He's stupid, he'll do executive order nonsense, yes, he's liberty killing, all those things, but the Republic will go on. It will not go on at this continuous pace of it's just going to keep going, because he's an embodiment of a problem right now. He's not the problem himself. Getting him out of office will not fix what is wrong with this country, I promise you. You guys can fix what's wrong with this country. He is a moment that has created a lot of crisis, but he's not the end, he's not the goal, he's not the objective. So just keep that in mind. But anyway, elections will always continue, so pick victories along the way. I know in Ohio I'm encouraging groups, because Ohio's a swing state just like Missouri. I said, guys, if we lost Ohio, there's something we can't control. There's a million variables in an election you can't control. What you can control is what your group does at a local level in order to impact the particular process. So set goals for yourself that are actually achievable. If you achieve those goals, your head should be really high. You should be fired up and ready to continue the fight after November. Because the other thing I'm really concerned about right now, maybe more than anything, is let's say, I don't even suppose it's a difference. If Obama wins, I'm scared what happens to the movement, because people go, oh well, nothing we can do, the country's going down the drain. And if Romney wins, it's like, oh well, we got Obama out of office. Neither one of those is the end. Neither one is the end. So build yourself some victories that you can really sink your teeth into and make a lot of sense. So I don't even care what the result is in November. You should be able to hold your head high for what you built with infrastructure to facilitate future objectives. Because this is not the end, guys. We're still in the beginning. It's very early. But they got that. They really, really got that. Lots of small victories along the way. So there's I'm going to skip this. Okay, so they're building up the infrastructure. They've got small victories along the way. These little Alinsky victories. They're focusing on precinct building, coalition building. I'll give an even tighter case study momentarily on even down to the precinct level. But here's what it resulted in. This is how substantive it can be. This is like, wow, this is amazing and very successful. For the county endorsement meeting, this is on the party side, took place in November 2011. They broke or endorsed all the establishment candidates were out there. Either they weren't endorsed or they got their respective candidates endorsed. It's sort of Tea Party influence in this party. And who were some of those people? Those of you who know county politics, you know that county commissioners and county prosecutors are particularly influential in counties. Knocked them all out. I'll tell you more of their story momentarily. This is the incumbents that were the establishment guys.
Who knocked them out?
The Tea Party people through engagement. But I'll tell their electoral history in a second. In the case of just the endorsements, none of those people got endorsed. Not a single one of the established people endorsed, because they had so much influence in that central committee. And I've read your stuff to know enough that you get it. You understand that if you're not endorsed and you're not appearing on that party slate card, you also understand 80% of the districts in the United States are single-party districts. So you win the primary, you win the general. That's the way it works in this country, the vast majority of the time. Not every time, but the vast majority of the time. So being able to take an endorsement from, in this case it was Ohio Congressman Jean Schmidt, she's Ohio 2, her home county Republican Party would not endorse her in her primary. They just said, no, we're not doing it. Go ahead, you had a question.
One of the problems we've got, though, is our Tea Party groups will not make endorsements prior to the primary. It's one of the things, somewhere along the line this came in, and lots of the groups are
So,
like that.
They had, and a lot of other groups have exactly the same scenario. This activity went through the Republican Party itself.
So that went through the Central Committee.
This is actually the county party. This isn't even, this is the same people. The Tea Party influenced this process.
Yeah, but the county, the Central Committee of St. Charles anyway, which I can speak for, does not endorse before the primary either.
You can, well, and this is, you guys know this too. If you have the majority and you have the officers, you can alter your bylaws or do whatever you need to do in order to facilitate that change. Which,
That's it.
yeah, when you have the people in these precinct spots, you have all the keys to the castle. You can do anything you want to at that point. So change the laws as you need. This is really funny. Before they got there, they got, all these Tea Party people are on this ticket running for this office in 2010, like out of nowhere, like, what's going on? So the party changed their bylaws to go, well, anybody, because they didn't think they'd win very many spots. Anybody that's in, they changed their re-election terms from 2 years to 4 years. So what they did was lock them all in. I mean, they couldn't have known they were going to be that successful in their first run, but it's still really funny. So, but yes, the bylaws can be altered as need be. So anyway, they break the endorsement of a sitting U.S. congressman who has all of the voting influence in that party. I mean, they are definitely the most powerful person in districts. No one's even remotely close. And they ended up breaking that endorsement, and then they couldn't get the endorsement of the Republican Party, so, and this is another story, they created their own, it's called Claremont Liberty PAC, and they did all the electoral get-out-the-vote work that I'm going to show you here shortly from their own side. They didn't worry about the party. They just said, you know what, we're going to influence this election one way or another for the guy that we want to. And then this is one of only two. The story ends up here. Jean Schmidt, sitting Ohio congressman, multiple terms, squishy, not that great a congressman, ends up losing her primary bid to this Brad Wenstrup guy. First time, the guy has never held a public office, ever. Dr. Brad Wenstrup, he's a retired lieutenant colonel and an orthopedic surgeon. Smart guy, articulate, sharp, but he was definitely an underdog in this instance, especially never having a fundraising network or anything like that. He ends up winning. It is one of only 2 Republican incumbents in the entire United States in 2012 that this happened. Funny enough, I was a part of these. I mean, Ted was the leader on this one, but the only 2, they used American majority trained techniques, and the other guy that won in Oklahoma, the only other Republican to upset an incumbent, is a Republican, or is an American majority trained candidate. Again, I promise I will tell you things. These things really work. They're actual tools, what we'll cover today. So they break these endorsements. People move forward. Like I said, they form this Liberty PAC to help that. They use, I'll show more later, the way that the process played out, but they ended up getting to 35,000 high test voters, and I'll show you some of the tools and the means for doing that. They do not, you want to if you can. Obviously you want to go eye to eye with people if you can. But if you're in a big enough area, you're probably not going to get face-to-face with everybody. So they did face-to-face where they could, and they developed these little bags of just some content, which I'm going to go over a couple of those pieces with you today. What do you leave with a voter if you can leave something with them, because I don't have time to actually go face-to-face. So they developed a nice method for doing that. A last piece that helped in this instance was there's a Texas-based super PAC called the Campaign for Primary Accountability. They came in with some dollars at the last second. It's really a funny story because a donor that was in Ohio who was going to engage in this race no matter what called me and said, what do you know about this district? And we talked to him. He goes, well, you talked to this Texas super PAC about what's happened in this district? And I said, yep. gave them a full lay of the land. We spoke for probably an hour, hour and a half, and so we talked through some data and what was possible. Turned them over to Ted, who's the guy running this, and they go, well, what are you guys capable of doing on the ground? Had Ted not had infrastructure, organization, coalition, and the ability to pull some of this stuff off, that Texas PAC would have not spent $1. But they looked at it, evaluated the district, and said, you know what, this is worth engaging in. So they engaged in this district, they spent some money on direct mail, radio, the things that local Tea Party group, those local grassroots people couldn't afford because they didn't have the connections to some larger money. The Texas PAC wouldn't have engaged if there was not a grassroots presence there. So the two had to come together. And then the third piece in their formula was grassroots coalition, some money made it possible. The third piece of their formula was they've taken over the Republican Party and basically broken the endorsement of the party itself for that particular candidate. So the party wasn't a tool that the candidate could use. And so those things come together, and all of a sudden we're going to have a new congressman from Ohio too, because of precinct level organizing. A grassroots group with nothing but blood, sweat, and tears for the longest time, figuring out a process that just really made sense.
What are test voters?
Was there something on this screen?
Eye test.
Oh, high propensity voters. They're the most likely to vote people in a primary. So high propensity voters or high test voters. So here was what they got in the end, sort of the end results of our little case study. They had the highest turnout of any county in Southwest Ohio. Every single county GOP endorsed candidate won, so those were their endorsements that they won. Six-term incumbent prosecutor. Their state central committee race, this is politics in Ohio are different, but at the state central committee level, there was a lot of frustration and money spent to fight these fights. There was a big upheaval in the state central committee. Their guy won. Brad Wenstrup beats Gene Schmidt. That's the congressman. And then now they've gotten the chance to appoint commissioner seats. They're up to, I think the last time I talked to Ted, they've won 14 elections in their county, from school boards to city councils to congressmen to prosecutors to commission. Why? They're dealing in precincts. No one's even in the ballpark with them. No one's even playing ball. They've outran everybody. And when you have these kinds of successes dealing on that Alinsky type mentality, guess what? People like to be around winners. People like to be around success. So now the ball's just going even faster at this point. It's moving even faster and stronger. They're confident from the ground up. They can change everything. Any state rep, actually one of the state reps is one of the people they help get in office. But it's quantifiable, it's completely measurable, they're able to duplicate it. And what does this give you as citizens moving forward? This gives you a tremendous ability to call up a legislator and go, listen, you're on the list, buddy. You need to be on the right side of this issue. But if you do not possess the ability to influence an election, they're just going to pat you in the head and go, I hear you, that's really nice. I thank you for bringing that up. They have no incentive to listen to you. So good organization, good coalition building in this case study ends up with the ability to not just influence the outcome of elections, because that's great, but the real goal is to influence policy. Because I don't care who's in office if you're still putting the wrong policy. So I get so frustrated with the Republicans. Like, what are you guys doing? You're still doing the wrong things. I don't care that Republicans in office. I care that a good person's in office that does the right policies, that votes for the right things. That's the goal. That's what they're able to influence at this point. If one of these guys in this particular county is voting against something they don't want, they possess the ability to just take them out of office. That's a pretty cool thing. That's a very influential situation. And the last thing Ted always says in this, since I'm doing this section for him, he says, we should, as citizens, think about this like political jury duty. I don't have some kind of secret interest or incentive or county contract or state contract I'm trying to get or win or influence. It's like jury duty. You need to go and serve and do these things because it's your part of fixing the country, and you can walk away and somebody can replace you, and that's cool. But as long as we're looking at this like political jury duty, you can accomplish some pretty amazing things because you're not worried about a lot of the sort of silly politics and consequences along the way. And you have to play a lot of these games. It's just the way the world works. But if your motives are right going in, you're doing something that is almost non-existent in the vast majority. And so that's the future. There's some pieces of this. I'm not going to cover all the technology we typically cover in one of these trainings. So I want to say it. One of the other things that's particularly important that drives this success story, this case study, is that they built up a very, very robust web-based community. And not just social networking, though. Teach a whole class on Facebook. We're not going to do it today, or Twitter, or all those different things. They built up a blogging community. Now, why is a blogging community fascinating? In this instance, this single county, just this highlight right here over all this stuff, it says the website's running 20,000 page views a month. It's actually up to 30,000 now. They're still trending up. Now, why does that even matter? Remember, I said this isn't in the city. This isn't in Cincinnati. This is outside. Probably a lot of you get, your local community papers, the weeklies. They're not normally dailies because community papers can't afford to do that anymore. They'll get a story in, and it's probably not always favorable to your perspective. Because I've even found that even the suburban papers are not exactly the type of media and reporting that I wish was out there. But they're dying, and they know that they're dying. Their staffs are getting smaller. So they focused on web-based stuff. Per story, I can Google in things in Claremont County Tea Party on particular issues. They're outrunning all of the local media. So when you're Joe Schmo in Claremont County, you go looking at an issue on a levy on a school district or something, you get their perspective first. Now, how is that possible? Because they've created different types of groups that are blogging on different types of issues, and I think they're up to 15 or 20 precinct-specific websites, blogs. Just single person, hi, I'm the precinct committeeman, or I'm a precinct captain in this area. I have a blog on happenings in my precinct with my neighbors in my community, and then the magic of the way that Google works, these algorithms for search engines, is that when they start linking stories one to another, all of their relevance rises. So when you're out there searching for a story in this county or in these areas or on these topics, you keep finding them. They're taking over the internet. It's really cool. I mean, it's really, again, it's a whole class. We do like a 4-hour class on effective blogging, but we don't have time for it. So it's something else you should take away. Every successful organization, I think moving to the future, we'll do one component on technology, is really able to harness the power of the web, and it's not that hard. We say if you can send an email, you can build a blog. I'm not exaggerating. I mean, the format looks just like an email, like subject, type it in. It's really that simple. But the platforms are so cookie cutter at this point. You don't have to know how to code anything. You don't have to know the web. You have to know how to put your heart on paper and make substantive differences in people's minds and hearts and eyes when they read something. So this is kind of what's possible, I guess, what I would consider sort of the top tier of engagement from an elected office to controlling media. It's an amazing thing what they've accomplished in a single county, and it's definitely possible to duplicate. Before I jump over to anything else, questions on this little case study of kind of how they went from nothing in 2009 to probably the most influential political force in their region right now. Good.
I just kind of one thing I want to say about the blog, which is typical teacher coming out to me. When you write the blog, get someone to go over it that knows what they're doing, to edit it, revise it for you. So many times I have read things and it's like the misspelling sticks out more than one stupid word sticks out, or like the way it's said is unclear, or run on. This is just it's my pet peeve, let's face it. But you've got to make yourself understood. I also I tutor kids in English. Okay, it's your mother tongue, and I give them much more than they'll ever get in the public school. And it's just so important. You can have the most important message in the world, and if it's not said correctly, you'll lose everybody. You may use the wrong word.
You know what, Olivia, I'm going to, just based on, it's a good transition point, there's a couple things we're going to cover. Because one is messaging, how we relate to sort of the middle, because we're going to need to get at the vote for all of these people before we jump into sort of techniques. One of the things to keep in mind is that your words really matter. I mean, I cannot explain to you how much your words matter. If you are meeting someone for the first time, especially just at any event, it doesn't matter what it is, and I don't mean like a partisan type event or a Tea Party rally where it's really friendly. The vast majority of Americans, it's horrible, but they're not ready to hear what you're saying. They're just not. They're not ready to hear this. And here's proof. Whoops, I'm knocking stuff over. I did some consulting work a couple of years ago, and I was lucky enough to sit in bunches of these focus groups and watch these polls, and you hear these things all the time about the Lunt-style focus groups. I've sat in multiple of his, and a lot of other guys too that do this type of work. There was this moment I will never forget because it changed my entire perspective of how I approach people. That all the people are sitting at this table is a group of men and a group of women in 2 separate sessions. They're going through commercials and facts and figures. You're trying to figure out, do people relate to this? Is it important? How big of a deal is it with people? Because it matters what you put in ads and messages and things like that. Just like, bring a product to market. Ford does this stuff. Everybody does it in the advertising world. So we're sitting there with this group of people with behind a two-way mirror, and so we're just watching them talk through these ideas. And they're flashing on the screen. You get a screen like this up, and they're putting different things. We're showing them commercials and testing messages. One of the things we just simply asked for some factual information. And one of them was, they flashed the total, I don't remember what it was at that time, probably 15 trillion, 14.5 trillion, but the national debt, and then the percentage of national debt owned by foreign countries. And then the source was cited as Department of the Treasury. So this wasn't like a random organization, it was official government record, right? Authoritative. Doubtful sometimes, but authoritative. So this flashes on the screen, they've got these little rating things, and they're going believable or not believable. Over 80% of the room said it wasn't believable. Folks, the country doesn't understand the moment that we're in. So when you go to them with messaging or even on a blog, this is what sort of piqued this in my head, they can't hear Obama is evil and here's all the reasons why, because they shut down. There can't be conspiratorial things. And some conspiracies are true. People conspire to do things. All conspiracy means. People come together and conspire to get something done. But when you make out, and this happens a lot, I mean, a lot of people listen to Glenn Beck, they're like, and this George Soros guy is pulling these strings from behind. Done, you're gone, you're lost. They are not going to believe anything you say from that point forward. It's too much. People are not, their minds are not ready to accept these things, and you can't blame them, right? I mean, the country was never supposed to be in a moment where we had to be obsessed with every single little thing that politicians were doing. Because the premise for the U.S. Constitution was pretty much, it's supposed to protect liberty and property, and I can pretty much go and live my life how I want as long as I'm not bothering anybody else. That's the United States. It's personal and economic freedom, leave me alone. So when we do this for generations, you are used to just going about your business, producing for your family, building a life, having fun, doing your own things. When it starts going off the rails because there's all this government stuff coming, people haven't been used to hearing it for years and years and years. And you've probably done a quick education for yourself for probably a year or two, maybe even 3, maybe a little longer. And then you're rooted in this stuff. This is your daily life. In fact, all your friends now talk like this. Like, I've lost all my Facebook friends that didn't believe this stuff, right? It's gone, right? Like, and all my personal life friends, like, they don't even, I'm like, I won't talk politics. We don't want to. Right? You guys know this. You're immersed in it every single day. So then you go before someone and you're meeting them for the very first time, you just lay into this stuff. It's like throwing up in front of them. They're like, gross. What's wrong with you? That's what it feels like. I mean, that's how sort of big the messaging thing is. We'll talk about messaging real quick. Here's some things, just some helpful stuff. Should be big enough for most people to do this, to read this. This is actually from a Lunt's workshop. I can email, it's like Judy's email, I can email it to her if you guys just want to have this. Because this common messaging thing is really a big deal when you're talking to people. You can lose people, never get a second chance to make a first impression, right? Cliché's been around forever. This is one of those things. And you don't want, there's a fine line in coming across as I'm talking from a focus group. Because you could feel that, like I said to say, Romney does that a lot. Really? Really, Plastic Man? Come on. My wife, yeah, I'm uber over political, like, off the deep end, crazy. Just my life has become all this stuff. That's all I do now with this kind of stuff. My wife is the opposite side. She just doesn't care. She's one of the people that she's not stupid, she's busy, right? We have 3 kids, I mean, you know what I mean? It's like she's living life. That's the average American. But I know she looks at these people on TV and their sort of BS meter goes up and goes, I don't know. I don't know why I don't like that, but I don't like that. Like, you can sort of sense it, right? You see sincerity. So I'm not telling you talk in cliches all of the time, because the sincerity is lost, and that's something that's very important for candidates or leaders in groups, whatever you're doing. But you do need to understand at least what not to say sometimes. Just pick and choose things that make sense. There's a second section here. Scroll down a little bit. This is so fun. Other phrases to use in conversation. I'll just read a couple of these. No, these are good ones. So here's also how, I didn't bring in my literature, I use this a lot. How I also know this works. I said we got 66% of the vote in Ohio, in a state that we don't have elections like that in Ohio. It just doesn't occur. We're really tight every single time on big statewide issues, candidates, issues, we don't have big landslides like that. What was our message with regards to health care? We did not even use the word Obamacare in our campaign. We didn't use it. We didn't use it. The word Obamacare, by the way, polls very badly. It polls wonderfully with all of us. We're like, yes, he is responsible for this. But average person doesn't like that because they're not engaged all the time. And Democrats hate it. Hate it. They're really bad. But the majority of independents don't like that either. So when you go, well, let me talk to you about how bad Obamacare is. They go, you know what? You're demonizing this guy. You didn't give him a chance. Well, I don't need you to love everything I'm saying, but you got to take my position. You immediately wrote yourself off the moment you start doing something like that. So it doesn't always have to be about anti-Obama. There's a million things in between that actually are great common messaging. The one that we used was freedom of choice. You should have the freedom to choose whether or not you buy this insurance or not. It pulls off the charts. Who dislikes freedom of choice? And we didn't have a humongous campaign, so the ballot language is very short, very simple, very easy to read. We also know for a fact, and we polled after the fact, we did a lot of exit polling, they had to have read the ballot language. So they read the ballot language, and it was based on freedom of choice, the way it was written. It was like putting an advertisement in front of them. Because it didn't talk about all the bad things and what was horrible and if the world was going to come to an end. It gave people an honest assessment that was personal and specific to them. You should have your choice of doctors. You should be able to choose whether or not you purchase something or not. That was the entire message. That was the entire campaign. It was driven by a narrative that revolved around freedom of choice. So I know that our side has the ability to do this. We choose the wrong messages. Some actually choose the wrong messages all the time. But in this instance, we definitely chose the wrong message. So freedom of choice is a real easy one. Someone else was looking at it. We can take a picture. I'll come back up to a few of these. If anybody just wanted to, again, I'll send it to Judy. But if you have a couple that you like, real easy way to sell things. And I'll pass these out now as well. You don't need to hear. Here's some other, these are some good common ground things. There's extra stuff in these manuals too. But right at the front, there's a lot of stuff I'm going to give you before I jump into the next section. This isn't so I hope you go racing. There's some really good common message stuff on the back. Feel free to use these, and I'll show you how to use them momentarily. But these really easy things. 77% of Americans want government to reduce deficits. That's from Erasmus involved. I think there's some common ground in there with the average person. I was talking to Judy out front, and I said, you know, Ohio and Missouri are very close to each other culturally. Like the people are kind of Midwestern value type stuff. The Democrats are not Democrats as in I'm a hard progressive, state-driven, pass it out to everybody. They're Democrats by history sometimes. A lot of Republicans are Republicans by history as well. But that doesn't mean that a lot of this common ground messaging stuff doesn't make sense to people. I mean, really simple things like, do you have to balance your budget at home in order to, meet your bills and save for the future? Yes. Don't you think it would be right for government to have to do the same thing? Yeah, I do. Well, did you know that we're actually spending, we're $16 trillion into debt at this point? Do you think that's right?
For sure.
I have more. I do. I should have brought plenty.
That page right there.
I do. That one I have to email to Judy because I didn't bring it to pass out. Here you go. But there are examples of those kinds of things in that little card. Skip the race card. I just want to give you a sample of a few things. So when you're out talking to people, or when you're out canvassing, or when you're trying to build a group, or any of these things, There are lots of just common ground messages that resonate past the candidates. Party labels also don't work very well when you're in that moment. If you're in the party, you do whatever you need to do. But just be aware of your audience. I think that's probably one of the biggest mistakes we all make, is we're not aware of our audience, where we're at, who we're saying it to, where it's at, and different messages resonate with different people. So there's a couple things in there. So now let's get into the how you use some of this messaging stuff.
So this isn't a race car?
People have-
This isn't a race car?
It is actually a race
It's a
car.
race car, okay.
There is a real race car, yeah, number 81. The American Majority is doing they did some polling, identified that NASCAR voters typically, ideologically, so they're doing huge nationwide voter registration to get out the vote drives through NASCAR. So, yeah, they're actually sponsoring cars so they can have a booth at every NASCAR race. Yeah, it's interesting. They're the first. I haven't heard of another Liberty group doing it, so it's pretty interesting that they've done it. We'll see. It's the first year they've done it. They're trying to track and trend all the results to go, is it worth it? Because it costs a lot of money to sponsor a car. But it was interesting. I've been to one of the races, worked the booth. It's been a lot of good conversations with people. We'll see. So lots of people are attacking things from different ways. All right. We'll get through this, and then we're going to take a break. And then we'll do some technology stuff and a little bit more messaging and get out the vote stuff after that. We'll take a break here at 15 minutes. This one's not too long. All right, so I talked about what that case study was in Claremont County. That I said, this actually worked. This worked really well. Well, this is all the way down to their precinct level. How do they do it at the precinct? This was put together for us by Jane Brandt, one of the actual a person who organized her precinct. And so we're going to go, this is a real person. These are real results, everything we're going to cover. This is an acronym. If you got nothing else from me today, I want you to get this. I mean, seriously, this is the biggest thing. ICAP. What does ICAP mean? ICAP means that you should identify like-minded neighbors in a precinct. I guess this really works across the entire state, but let's talk about it in the context of the precinct. You're going to connect with people. So in this case, once you've identified people, we'll tell the whole story here momentarily. Once you've identified with people, you have to connect with very specific ones because you're going to want to do things with them. It's not just a matter of, oh, there's really nice people in my neighborhood. No, I'm going to connect with those people and do something with them. There has to be some kind of an action. You're not there just to hang out, have fun, have ice cream together, barbecues together. All that stuff's cool. I heard prayer groups, all those things. It's awesome. Please do all of that stuff. Those things are all good. But have an action item in mind. I'm not just coming to your house to talk about how frustrated I am about the direction of the country, because those days are gone. Let's actually have some kind of action item in mind for why I'm meeting with somebody and what we're going to do together. And then, even in spite of, and this is the one that I told you, it scares me, even in spite of an election, regardless of the results, you have to be able to preserve the coalition of people that came together to do something. Because I don't think at this moment in time, at least, it's going to be a wonderful group of all these amazing candidates just going to sweep in and fix all of these things. We're not there yet. There's some good people out there, but it's certainly not the majority of people. We still have problems inside and out of the Republican Party, and certainly within the Democrats as well. I'm an equal opportunity picker when it comes to candidates. So you've got to be able to preserve a coalition so that you can do things independent of a party, and especially independent of an election cycle. We call it, there's a boom-bust that is election cycles. So everybody gets ramped up, and I'm fired up, we're going to win this election. It'll happen this year, it's already happening, everybody's fired up. We're going to ramp up, I'm going to make these phone calls, I'm going to go to these neighbors, and I'm going to be fired up about this thing, we're going to spend this money, we're going to get this data, we're going to do all these things, and the day after the election, it's gone. It's absolutely gone. Well, what if you preserve your coalition so you go, you know what, there's a few other things we need to work on in this state. And it's not just getting somebody elected. If you do that, you will possess the ability to change anything you want. I mean anything you want. And there are, since I'm combining presentations here, flip over. I argue that this is really what it's about. The goal is to change or protect public policy consistent with our beliefs and principles. The end is not getting someone elected. Getting someone elected facilitates this happening. I said it before, but I don't care who's in office anymore. I care that you're fixing the problem. If you owned a company and you had to replace a department head because something was wrong, or you had to replace somebody in a store because something was wrong, and then the new person comes on board and the same problems keep happening, you haven't fixed the problem because you replaced the person. The problem is still sitting there, which means it's very likely you'll probably have to replace the person again, or do it yourself. So what I consider sort of doing it ourselves, there really are only 3 paths to fixing things, or changing policy. If you would agree that's the goal, is we have to actually change the policy. Citizens initiative. This is you place it on the ballot yourself. And I don't know all of Missouri's rules. I know that you can do initiated statutes and constitutional amendments. Those are statewide. I actually pulled your numbers if anybody's ever looked this up before. You guys have ever seen that? That's what it takes to do a statewide. A statute is 143,000 registered voters. Currently, it changes with your gubernatorial races, by the way. It's a percentage of your previous gubernatorial race. That's how your citizens initiatives work.
Right.
Ohio's actually the same. And then for an actual, you can amend your state constitution with 230,000 registered voters signing. And what it does is place it on the ballot, on a general election ballot, and people vote for it. That's the actual process. So that's what I mean by citizens initiative, is gather the registered voter signatures, and you can place it on the ballot so voters do it. The legislature doesn't have to do it, the governor doesn't do it, you guys do it as citizens. And I don't know all of Missouri politics, obviously, but I know in Ohio, we're forced to do that because our legislatures won't take up tough items sometimes. It just politically, they feel it's not tenable, and so we're going direct to ballot with some really important things, like the healthcare freedom amendment. Go ahead.
So the totals at the bottom wouldn't change because we actually lost a congressional seat, so the totals wouldn't change, just the proportions within those columns would change?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
So in Ohio, we lost 2, but yeah, I know. Ohio's hurt, man. That's a whole other story.
What statute again?
I don't, again, I'll explain Ohio's because I really don't know enough about Missouri, but
Statute is.
the way initiated statutes work in Ohio, and please feel free if you know Missouri law better than me, but initiated statutes are, I get so many votes, I get so many registered voters, I present the issue to the state legislature, and the state legislature can place it before voters at a smaller threshold of signatures than is the actual amendment process, which is I skip the legislature in its entirety, but I'm amending the state's constitution via the voters.
We call it an initiative petition here,
Okay.
more than a statute. It's a statute made by the initiative of the citizens as opposed to a statute that is made by the legislature.
Okay, so it is basically the equivalent of that's in the law.
It ends up as a law
Got it.
unless it amends the Constitution,
Which would be the amendment here.
would be the
There
amendment.
you go.
Yeah.
So there's the difference between the two. One is a law, one is a permanent amending of the state constitution. I bring this up because this is the way it works in Ohio and most states. I actually did some research on this. Most states work the same way. If I can do, and this was revolutionary the first time I heard about it. If I can do an initiated statute for a lot of things, meaning that voters have direct access to the ballot, that's kind of how you'd say it. Voters have direct access. You can do property tax rollbacks in a county. You can do, look at your laws. You can recall school board members. You can do all of these things as local as you want to get it, and to individual cities. You can amend charters to cities. You can do all kinds of things by direct voter access because you have ballot access in this state. So it is an amazing policy tool. Just the ability to be able to do a citizens initiative is really, it's sort of.
Okay, now I'm asking everybody and you. The statute, that number is like, you see people running around the grocery stores, will you sign this? That's where that number comes from?
Well, yeah, so it would have to be validated registered voters. That's what the
Yeah.
number comes from.
Yeah.
So in math, like I could talk in terms of Ohio, here I'll flip your numbers back up here just so you have them in front of you. And this will change, by the way. Your next gubernatorial election, all those numbers will change. Not like by 20% or anything, but probably within a few percent they'll change.
Why?
Because it's based on the percent of the previous gubernatorial election. The number of people who voted in that election, I believe for your constitutional amendment, 8% of the total population in Missouri that voted in the previous gubernatorial election. It's just, it is by statute in your constitution that these are the numbers, the way it works, and it never changes. but the number of voters in any given election changes, so it's sliding. Each gubernatorial election is giving you new numbers, give or take.
And I may need more or fewer.
It could be more or fewer, but I mean, it's not going to be, oh, now it's only 20,000 this time. No, for your statute, it says 143,000. That could be 135,000, let's say, the next time. But here's the key on these, just to keep in mind. If anyone really want to talk about this, I'm happy to talk to you offline, details on this. But that's 143,924 validated registered voters. You heard up here, True Vote did their whole thing, right? Voter rolls aren't perfect. And then also, it would take a lot of time to gather that many signatures. It's a heck of a lift. It's a Herculean lift to do these kinds of things. But people die, people move, things change. So not every signature you turn in to the state is going to be valid. That's just the way it is. So you can account for a number of invalid signatures, and not fraudulently so. I mean, literally, people die, people move from the time you gather it to the time you turn them in. So that is validated signatures. The state goes, yep, we certify these people are all real voters, and they really all do want this. They want the state to have a vote on this particular law or this particular amendment. And that's what a ballot initiative is. So the state ones are a very big deal. Again, I've talked structure with you guys if you ever want to do something like this big. I'm more interested in you thinking about it as a local concept. Could you repeal a tax? Could you change things by this initiative process? Absolutely you can. You could do some really amazing things. And I think sometimes our side also doesn't think of things in terms of strategic uses of these things. If you got in a city 1,000 signatures for a particular thing, and then went to city council or whoever, or the school board or whatever, and said, listen, we're going to move forward on this thing if you guys don't do the right thing. All of a sudden, you're taking the power right out of their hands. They get real nervous. They don't like that. I'm serious. That's the one common denominator I figure out politics across parties, across everybody. They don't like not having power. So when citizens go, well, you know what, we'll do this ourselves. They'll, well, okay, well, we can address that. We can deal with that. Because they can't lose that position of power. It's really important to them. The only reason they matter to you. So they lose that, and all of a sudden, now people are running the show. I don't want this. We can't have that. So it's a good strategic tool. So even if you don't think you can finish something, it's kind of interesting at local levels, a strategic tool to push policy a certain direction. But anyway, you can do it directly as well, even at local levels. So these are the 3 ways. Citizens initiative, actually change the policymakers. And I would even throw in the central committee thing into that because they help endorse people that end up becoming policymakers in the end. So I think those are kind of one and the same. But basically win elections. And then influence existing policymakers. That's it. Those are your only 3 ways, really, to do this. If you really want to change policy, which I think is the goal for all of us, or at least should be, not to win an election, is to change, is to fix the problem. The election is a means to fixing the problem. But if the guy's not doing it, got to change the guy, I got to influence him to do it different, or I'm going to do it myself. And that's what those 3 methods are. Yeah, absolutely. So as far as objective setting goes, and I'll jump back into the street captains here in a moment, when you're talking action items, and you're sitting talking to people, and you're doing all of this work, what are you doing it for? Can you actually say, here's the things we need to be doing. I actually have these objectives. I think these are the means to fixing X, Y, and Z. And then you have little Alinsky-style victories along the way. Hey, you know what? We went out and gathered 500 signatures this weekend. That was huge. 500 signatures. 10 of us went and got 500 signatures, which is more than possible, by the way. Stand in front of a public library and get about 30 an hour. That's about the pace you can get. Done it many times. But those kinds of things are extremely measurable, working towards a larger objective that is building your coalition because you had an action item that brought people in the door. See how this stuff builds on itself? It's activism with purpose. We had this goal. I set some steps along the way for myself. I was forced, as a matter of, if we're trying to do this, to build a plan to get the thing done, and therefore I gave myself these little victories along the way that intensified and made my coalition more successful. So one builds on the next. So let's talk about, again, we're back to Claremont County as our little case study here. ICAP was the means to doing all 3 of those things. was the means to doing it. Let's talk about sort of first step in this process. And if you want to take notes on any of this stuff, these slides are right here. They're in the little thing that I handed you. So feel free to jot this down, notes to the side, but the actual words are on these slides. So you don't need to write down all the stuff. It's right there for you. So it's a step-by-step process in how to build a precinct and actually organize street captains and hopefully do one of those three things we talked about: the initiative, change policy, or change elected official, or elect them. So number one, first thing you want to do, you need to identify people. Print out a walking list. You can get this from your Board of Elections. Again, I don't know Missouri, but most Board of Elections can give you a walking list of people that are in your precinct, specific to your neighborhoods.
Only if you buy it.
You do what?
Penny and name.
Only if you buy it.
And how much is it typically?
Penny and name.
Okay, so, and then, again, every state's a little different. Precincts, probably what, many as 1,000 people?
They'll print it out or put it on a disc so you can
What do you buy?
slice it nicely.
Okay, the whole thing, they give you the whole county?
Precinct, you wouldn't want to buy the whole county, you just want to buy the precinct.
All right, well, methods, I guess I'll leave to you because it's so specific. I'm going to show you political gravity as our technology piece in the afternoon is one means to getting that information. If you want to organize it, once it's loaded in, it's actually free to you. But either way, at some point you're going to have to start with a list. And on this list, what you want to do, oops, I didn't finish this one yet, is highlight like-minded neighbors you know. This is part of it. It could be, you go, this person's name's not on the list, and you go, you don't vote. I saw the presentation earlier, and you're like, how, you believe the same things I believe. You're not even registered to vote, are you kidding me? So you may find some voter registration opportunities just by looking at your neighborhood. But at bare minimum, look at those surrounding streets, and you'll know somebody in your neighborhoods. Even in rural areas, everybody's connected by a community somehow. In this workshop, when we do it, and if I actually had all the Missouri data and I understood it, we would print this for every single person in the room, and you guys would we give everybody 5 minutes, highlight names. You have to actually find people, and then your next job is to connect with those individuals in your precinct. You identify them first. You can send them a letter. You can hand deliver something. Obvious, if you know them, call them or walk over to their house. Email them if you've got that, that's fine too. You want to get some return information from them. I told you return path. Oh, this is the best way to reach you. I sent you this card, you responded, but do you have a phone number? It's easier for me to call you at, that kind of stuff, and to make sure that you do that. But at the contact point, once you say, yes, you guys are like-minded, that's pretty cool, you guys are willing to do something, set up a meeting in your house that actually has a purpose. So I physically meet with people. I also find, I do it myself, I hate it, but I do it, but I get overly dependent on email sometimes. Like, oh, I sent an email, that's going to take, it doesn't take care of it. There's something about looking someone in the eye, meeting them face to face, having a two-way exchange of information is very powerful and very substantive. So make sure you get them in person. It's not just enough to go, hey, we're all going to meet on Saturday, everybody meets such and such a point, and you send them an email and go, oh, we're going to go do this, and you show up and you're the only person there. It's happened, I've done it. So don't put yourself in that situation. Set up a meeting with those people, call them up, hey, can you make this meeting? Oh, it works for you, cool. Be at my house such and such time. Well, we're going to have, kids can come, feel free, we're going to have some barbecue. But we're going to talk about a couple things you have in mind. So identify the people on your list, actually contact them and schedule a face-to-face meeting. Do not rely on just, I found them and got some contact info. You need to meet with them in person. One of the things you're going to do is evaluate your precinct. So every precinct, and again, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir for certain parts of this. I think you guys know a lot of it, but probably worth going through, I guess. You actually need to look at the geography of your precinct. Every single one's different. There are literal barriers. So some precincts are entirely rural, so that's a lot. That's not a walking route, right? You're not going to walk those. You're going to have to consider, well, I may have to mail it, so that means you're going to have to develop a mail budget for yourself, which we're not going to talk about today, but if you really wanted to do, reach out, or you're going to have a much larger army of people that can do the drive down the road, drive up a rural route, go up to their driveway, and you're talking 15 minutes of voter type contact. That's a world of a difference than going into a suburban or urban area and just walking every single house. Totally different. So you need to be able to sort of look at your precinct and go, all right, what's my geography look like? Because it's going to change how I'm actually contacting people. Talked about this. This is so 101, but if you are doing a literature drop of some kind, you can't put things on or in mailboxes. It's a big no-no. Just